If the Torah is going to reject the notion that mathematics has a fundamental, foundational contribution to make to reality, if in other words it wants to very much tell you mathematics somehow comes after Hashem's creation, or in the process of Hashem's creation, and instead of it being kind of like the source of it, or the laws by which it must be generated. It is tempting to think that maybe the Torah would try to show you that with Gematria somehow, right? Because Gematria is the mathematics of the letters of the Torah. This is a tradition we have from the sages about how to turn the letters of the Hebrew alphabet into numbers. And if you do that, maybe it wouldn't be so surprising if the Torah has a little kind of succinct way of trying to make the point to you that you shouldn't get caught up in the idea that everything is mathematics. And so I think that there's a hint that you can find that expands out into something slightly bigger that's just a little bit remarkable and fun as a result. So first of all, just consider the first two words of the Torah. Bereshit, bara. Okay, so it's because the pasuk, is Bereshit bara Elohim et hashamayim ve'et haaretz. In the beginning, or in the first yield of creation, Hashem created the heavens and the earth, right? Bereshit bara is interesting because the first three letters of Bereshit are Bet Resh Aleph, and then the word bara afterwards is Bet Resh Aleph. So really it's bara, and then Shin Yud Taf, and then bara. So there's a bara on one side and a bara on the other side, and in the middle is Shin Yud Taf. And there are different things you can make out of that. The one I want to focus on right now is Shin Yud Taf as numbers, right? So Shin is 300, Yud is 10, Taf is 400. So Shin Yud Taf, there's a sense of a 3 from the Shin, because it's 300. There's a sense of a 1 from the Yud, because it's 10. And there's a sense of a 4 from the Taf, because it's 400. Shin Yud Taf is 314 in that view, okay? So 314 could be a coincidence. It happens to remind one of pi, right? Of 3.141592654 going on and on, because it's the first three digits, 3.14. And you could leave it there and just say, okay, but that could be a complete coincidence. Although it is a little bit interesting, it's sandwiched in between two different versions of bara. But someone might say also, oh, well, with Gematria, you're supposed to add the letters together, right? You're supposed to add Shin to Yud to Taf, so you would get 710. And that's not what we're doing here. So why are you doing that? Why are you saying Shin is 3 and Yud is 1 and Taf is 4? I'll say as an aside, if you go on, if this provokes your interest a little bit, then you say, okay, so if it were the case that the digits of pi were actually there, at creation at some level, the Torah is trying to show us that. Can we see anything else that kind of lines up with that? Well, it so happens there's another name of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Shin Dalet Yud, that adds to 314. So there is a name of Hashem that also is a 314. And then there's also the extension of that, Aleph Lamed Shin Dalet Yud, which is 345 when you add it all together. So that's interesting because that's the smallest Pythagorean triple, and it's also a sequence of integers, 3, 4, 5. So there is this sense of, you like mathematics, especially the mathematics of the ancient Greeks, maybe. It's like, okay, here's pi, and here's the Pythagorean triple. And it so happens that these are, by Gematria related to names of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So there's this thing lurking in the background of, the Torah knows that you are looking for mathematics as the explanation of creation. And it doesn't say that mathematics is the explanation of creation anywhere. And as we already alluded, it sort of hints that it's a tempting idea, but it's really more complicated. But it is still kind of tweaking your nose in the space of Gematria a bit and saying, okay, maybe there is something to this idea, like going back to what we raised before with pi, that pi is it stands for this sense that mathematics seems to be it's impossible to imagine how it could be different. Meaning, how could Hashem create a universe where in a flat plane the circumference of a circle wasn't pi? And it poses for us this kind of philosophical challenge to the notion that HaKadosh Baruch Hu can will whatever he wants into being. And mathematics makes us feel like, well, no, maybe you can have a different circumference if the surface is curved, but if you have a flat plane and then you have a circle in that plane, it must be that the circumference is pi, right? What would it mean for there to be a universe in which the digits of pi are different than they are in our universe? How could that be? How could mathematics produce a different result, right? That is the sense of the dangerous, the theologically dangerous sense that we get from pondering mathematics too much. And so what is HaKadosh Baruch Hu, what is the Torah doing to sort of play with that notion? It's sort of saying, oh, well, so does that mean that like there is something very closely aligned with how Hashem acts in the world that somehow is linked to the nature of what mathematics is? And so you have these names of Hashem that sound like Pythagorean triples or the digits of pi. And we see maybe the digits of pi appearing at the moment of creation. And it all still sounds kind of speculative, but I'll just point out one more thing, which is a bit less speculative, could still strike one as a coincidence, but I think it's pretty funny. Like, you wouldn't look for this except because you already saw the 314 in Bereshit bara. But then you say, okay, what did Hashem create then? Bereshit bara et hashamayim ve'et haaretz. Okay, so Hashem created hashamayim ve'haaretz. Hashamayim ve'haaretz, and it ends in the 7 days of creation. It's vayichulu hashamayim ve'haaretz, right? And when he finished the heavens and the earth. But now you say, all right, what is Hashemayim ve'aretz with the same methodology where we got 314 in the Shin Yud Taf? So Hashemayim, that's going to be 5, 3, 4, 1, 4. Ve'haaretz is 6, 5, 1, 2, 9. Okay? So 5, 3, 4, 1, 4, 6, 5, 1, 2, 9. That's Hashemayim ve'aretz. Again, where we're going. Hey is 5, Shin is 3, Mem is 4, Yud is 4, Mem is 4, Vav is 6, Hey is 5, Aleph is 1, Resh is 2, and Tzadi is 9. Okay, so that's lopping off the zeros, right? Which is not the common way that people combine letters together, because you're supposed to be adding them to get some lump sum, or that is what you see most commonly. But it's noticeable here that you have the digits of pi, right? That's not something that maybe leaps out at you, but it starts to think, oh, I have 1 3, and I have 2 4s, but when you start jumbling it around, it's really like 3, 1 4, 1 5 9 2 6 5 4. 3.141592654. That's pi for 10 places, and it so happens that Hashemayim ve'aretz gives you that. Not only that, but when you think about what is Hashemayim, it's the heavens, and what is haaretz, it's the earth. And what happens where heavens and earth meet, right? If you're in the middle of the sea and you have the horizon around you, where heaven and earth meet, what do you see? You see a circle, right? Hashemayim va'aretz is the circle, the perfect circle that you get to see in the world at any time in human history if you sail out on a boat into the flat ocean and look in every direction. It looks like you're surrounded by a big circle, which is the horizon. So that's fun. And it does seem like the Torah is really trying to tweak our nose in some way, but the question is why, right? The Torah never just tries to impress us. It has a message in everything that it seeks to convey. So what would the message be here? Well, I think in the end, it's a pretty simple one. It's the one that we've already been trying to argue for maybe more reasonably from other sources in the Torah, which is that it does not make sense to say that everything comes from mathematics or that Hashem comes from mathematics, chas v'chalila. Because look again back at the Bereshit bara. You have bara before and you have bara afterwards, and in between you have 314, this Shin Yud Taf. And so it's saying, look, mathematics didn't come first. There was bara before, there's bara afterwards. Mathematics is in the middle. It's part of the process, but it's not the fount of creation itself. And at the same time, it's also kind of warning you, right? Because this word Shin, or the sequence of letters Shin Yud Taf, also is like shtei. It's like, it evokes the idea of two, as does the repetition of bara, bara, bara. Like there's two baras. There's two creation verbs. And then there's the letters that mean two in between them. That there is this danger of dualism, right? That Hashem Echad, there's one God, and He created the world. But the moment you start playing around with the idea of looking for mathematics as part of the mechanism of creation, the Torah is warning you, now you're a dualist. Now there are two gods in your story. Now you're splitting, you're dividing creation. You are introducing two where there should be one. And so there's a willingness to acknowledge, on the one hand, that at some level, what is Hashemayim ve'aretz? What is the created universe, right? Hashemayim ve'aretz in the Torah, yes, it's like the sky and the earth, but in another sense, it's everything that is. And everything that is, somehow the Torah is saying, yeah, okay, so maybe everything that is at some level, the digits of pi were like the DNA for the universe to spring into being. But Hashem wrote that genetic code, right? He decided the digits of pi. He created everything, and He comes before, and He is one. And there aren't two different forces, one of which is mathematics, etc. So there's an acknowledgement of the mathematizability of creation and a nod towards the temptation to say everything is mathematics. And yet there's also this very strong pushback or withdrawal from that position, saying, never forget, there's one Hashem, He created the world. And although there is something compelling about the idea that there's, His creation is mathematical, and if you look for it that way, then you'll find it, that doesn't change the fact that He is above and beyond mathematics, and He may have made the world so that it yields to that kind of analysis when we undertake to analyze it in that way. But that's an activity that we decide to do, and it isn't the fundamental nature of the universe itself, because the creation of the one God is reflective of His oneness ultimately, and does not is not reducible simply to equations. The Torah, at the very least, wants to say that you need numbers and stories, and you can't kind of do without one or the other, and you have to find a way of grappling with and struggling towards a greater truth by using each of those things as kind of crutches that you switch between. And maybe you never perfectly get it right because you're not going to ever see the world as Hashem sees the world, but you can progress in your understanding and maybe mathematics will be a part of that, but it is never going to be the end and the completion of it.